Welcome, everybody. Have a seat. We're going to get things started here. Welcome, everybody, to the first lecture in the winter portion of our 2025-2026 TMU DAS lecture series. As you're settling into your new routines this semester, please take a look at all the posters around the building and the list of events, upcoming events on the department website. Now is the time to mark off your calendars. We have two more lectures after this that are part of this series, but there's also a lot happening. Hi, June. What are you doing there? There's also a lot of other events happening at the school this semester, so flag them now so that you can make space for them later. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dustin Valen, and I'm delighted to be co-chair of this year's lecture series committee, along with Jennifer Esposito. I also want to acknowledge our sponsors, without whom there would be no lecture series at all. Both this semester's lecture series events and last semester's are entirely the result of the generous support of Diamond Schmidt Architects, the Ontario Association of Architects, BDP Quadrangle, Thames Valley Brick and Tile, TPL Lighting, and Core Architects. We are extremely grateful to our sponsors for supporting public programming in the department, but also for enhancing the learning experience of our students. This series affords students valuable insights into the working philosophy and culture of many award-winning practices, which we're lucky to have at our doorstep here in Toronto. But it also underlines how architects can be positive change makers in the world, which is something that resides at the very core of our pedagogical mission here. I want to thank also our fantastic administrative team, Alex Berciano, who does wonderful work promoting the series, Francisco Bianchi, who deals with a lot of the behind-the-scenes financial matters, and of course, Ivan and Leo for getting us technologically equipped every Thursday evening. One small housekeeping item. I believe those of you looking for OAA credits, they're in the back of the room. Please grab one. They're outside the room. Are they at the back or are they outside, Jennifer? Where are they? They're just outside the room. Okay, so on your way out of the lecture, we have certificates printed that you can grab on your way out to satisfy your OAA credits. With that, I'm going to turn things over to one of our student volunteers, Jose Miguel Calais, who will introduce tonight's speakers and offer a land acknowledgement on behalf of the university. I will.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jose Miguel. Thank you for joining us tonight as part of the DAS lecture series. Before we begin, I'd like to start by acknowledging the land that we're on. It is important to recognize that Toronto is part of the dish with one spoon territory. It is also important to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is traditional territory of many nations, including the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas of the Credit, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We're very pleased to be hosting Allan Banina and Janice Lee, both associates of Gow Hastings, whose work spans higher education, community, and institutional projects across Canada. Allan is a versatile architect with substantial experience leading projects through all phases and built his portfolio both locally and internationally with work for Toronto-based clients, including the City of Toronto, University of Toronto, and Toronto Metropolitan University. In a career spanning nearly 2 decades, he has managed highly technical, award-winning projects for higher education clients in Ontario, including Conestoga College, Durham College, Fleming College, Laurentian University, and Niagara College. He is currently working on a project for Vancouver Community College in British Columbia. Allan completed his Bachelor of Architectural Studies and Master of Architecture at Carleton University in Ottawa, Ontario. Allan brings a background in traditional art as well as a widespread skill set with digital tools from his experience in 3D representation. An associate at Gow Hastings, he has been with the studio since 2011. Janice is a senior architect with over 18 years of experience managing projects of various scales at architecture firms across North America and Europe, with an extensive background in post-secondary and community projects. She has developed an expertise in leading major projects for both secondary institutions, including Toronto Metropolitan University, University of Toronto, Johns Hopkins University, Centennial College, and Seneca College. She is currently working on a project for Western University Ivey Business School. A graduate of the University of Toronto, Janice has a Bachelor of Arts and a Master of Architecture and uses her interdisciplinary art and architecture background to inform her designs. She has served as a design critic at OCAD University and Toronto Metropolitan University, Humber College, and is now and as a sessional instructor with the OCAD University Faculty of Environmental Design and University of Athabasca REIC syllabus program. Janice is an associate at Gow Hastings. Thank you.
Test. Hi, everyone. We're thrilled to be here tonight as the first lecture of the DAS lecture series. Hastings Architects is a Toronto-based studio of architects and designers that design public spaces with a specialized knowledge of education facilities. The firm was founded by Valerie Gow and Philip Hastings in 2002. My name is Janice Lee. I'm an architect and associate at Hastings Architects. And this evening, we're going to do a retrospective of sorts and share the themes that have woven throughout the firm's body of work and our own personal journey interfacing with the projects as students, intern architects, team members, and project architects. I'm going to hand it off to Allan now.
Hello, everybody. My name is Allan Banina. I'm a senior associate at Gow Hastings Architects. I've been with the firm for about 15 years. So Gow Hastings Architects began building its academic portfolio through modest small-scale projects, often with limited budgets, compressed schedules, and in spaces few other firms wanted. These were sometimes maintenance projects in back-of-house areas considered unglamorous or peripheral. Working in these in-between spaces shaped the studio's broader philosophy that every space serves a purpose, is meaningful to its users, and therefore deserves the same level of care and attention to be both functional and well-considered. This philosophy, combined with an openness to work at all scales, positioned Gow Hastings to take on one-of-a-kind facilities, and ultimately led to our specialization in educational environments, particularly in culinary schools. With each successive culinary project, the firm developed a deep and cumulative understanding of space usage, finishes, and specialized equipment, establishing Gow Hastings as a national leader in culinary academic design in Canada. This expertise with highly specialized equipment has proven readily transferable to an array of environments, allowing the practice to expand its portfolio to other places of learning while continuing to deepen its technical and design expertise. I completed my architectural education at Carleton University in 2006, at a time when the curriculum placed a strong emphasis on hand drawing and physical modeling. Design exploration was deeply rooted in tactile processes such as sculpting, sketching, and painting, which fostered a rigorous intuitive understanding of form and space. This hands-on approach to learning would later prove a critical foundation for my work designing spaces for education. As well, growing up in Toronto, immersed in one of the world's most culturally diverse cities, sparked an early interest in the study of culture and its relationship to the built environment. This curiosity ultimately informed my master's thesis, which explored themes of city building amongst racialized communities in Toronto. That interest continues to shape my professional work and has played an important role in my practice at Gow Hastings Architects, particularly in our collaborations with the Indigenous communities. The early years of my professional career were spent in Los Angeles, where I had the opportunity to apply my modeling skills and practice as an architectural designer at the office of Frank Gehry. This experience was transformative, offering an ideal transition from academia to the realities of professional practice. During this time, I worked on projects across a wide range of scales, from master planning the Sonderburg Harbor in Denmark, modeling building details at the Fondation Louis Vuitton in Paris, and furniture design for Vitra at the Novartis headquarters in Basel. As a token Torontonian in the office, I even served as one of the seated templates for the chairs now installed around the AGO. My time at Gary's provided a comprehensive understanding of design thinking from conceptual exploration through to execution. After 3 years in Los Angeles, I returned to Toronto to join Gow Hastings Architects, where I continued to refine my professional skills and develop design specialties, some anticipated and others that emerged more unexpectedly. For instance, my work specializing in spaces for First Nations learning and gathering align closely with my interest in heritage, community space, and community spaces for racialized groups. Contrastingly, I've built a portfolio specializing in culinary spaces. Gow Hastings already had a number of culinary projects under its belt when I joined the firm, but with each consecutive project, we built on our experience and have come to be recognized as leaders in the field. These ways of learning, academic research, and in professional practice, have shaped the type of work that I do and the design specialties that support it. I want to walk you through some of the projects featuring culinary spaces that we've done in the office, and then we'll walk through some of the Indigenous work. Our project for George Brown College's Chef's School included a 3-story infill addition and interior renovation on Adelaide Street East. We dramatically opened up and transformed a 1980s building into a showcase for innovation in culinary education. Riding on the explosion of the celebrity chef phenomenon and the Food Network in the early 2000s, the project enabled the college to raise its profile in the city with a recognizable campus landmark and to expand its food and hospitality programs. The building acts as a showcase of the college's hands-on culinary program, projecting student chef activities out onto the city. A glass facade exposes the inner workings of the school, giving street-level visibility to the kitchens and moving them out of their traditional hidden locations. Along a highly trafficked urban block, passersby can witness a culinary performance highlighted by students in their white chef uniforms and hats against a backdrop of stainless steel workstations. While stainless steel remains central to the technical and hygienic requirements of labs, it's intentionally complemented by boldly colored exhaust hoods and walls. Across our culinary projects, we have sought to move beyond the expected palette of white and steel and embrace ideas that spaces can be both highly technical and visually expressive. In this project, alternating labs are accented in red and yellow. I call them ketchup and mustard kitchens. Even when the school is closed, horizontal strips of colored glass make sure that the facade provides an interesting contrast to the historic buildings along the street. The culinary school was accompanied by our other project for the college's teaching restaurant on King Street East, named the Chef's House. Together, these two facilities increased George Brown College's presence within the neighborhood and helped frame Frederick Street as the precinct of the college's campus. We've all been in the typical downtown restaurants where the kitchen is hidden in the back or in the basement of a historic building. At the Chef's House, our strategy was to flip the conventional location of the restaurant, a kitchen, and place it directly onto the sidewalk. To support this openness, we introduced an innovative exhaust hood system composed of recessed ceiling coffers. This freed the space from low-hanging hoods and allowed the kitchens to remain as visibly unobstructed as possible. This approach maximized sightlines into the students' work, even accommodating the height of their tall starched hats. Although this project was completed many years ago, it remains one of our most recognizable works in the city, largely because of how successful it advertises the life onto the kitchen, onto the street. The view from Adelaide into the teaching labs was, for me, the first time that I'd ever seen inside a cooking class, and I'm sure it was for many people in the city. The next project I'd like to show is the Galen Weston Centre for Food in Whitby. It's one of Canada's first food education facilities to bring the field to fork concept to life. The building unites Durham College's hospitality, agriculture, and horticultural programs to narrate a story about the process of making a meal from crop to table. It was also one of my first projects at the office, where I was involved from site planning to schematic design up to construction administration. Mentored by more experienced team members, I really cut my teeth on this project, learning how to run projects and the dynamics of client and contractor relationships. With its own farm fields, greenhouses, and food labs, the center offers a unique space for research and applied learning for the full cycle of food production, from farming to dining. For us, the primary objective of the center was to draw closer connections between food production and consumption. As an avid gardener myself, it was a very exciting opportunity to plan a building as a landscape element enveloped by surrounding fields and orchards that would be tended by students and that would provide the produce used in cooking. Inside, we designed a double height atrium framed by floor to ceiling interior windows to provide immediate glimpses into the center's inner workings, its open kitchens, and its labs. The sequence of spaces culminates in the second floor with a teaching restaurant, a dining space that is open to the public and features expansive views of the fields. The restaurant's elevated position establishes a direct visual connection for diners between their food and its source. In this project, we refined our template for the ideal teaching kitchen. Equipment needing exhaust hoods was located to the perimeter of the space, creating clear sightlines and freeing the center of the room for flexible student work tables. Instructor demonstration counters were positioned at the front of each lab to minimize the reliance on audiovisual systems. As the first culinary school of its kind in the Durham region east of Toronto, the facility has played a huge role in local food culture. In the years following the establishment, we observed noticeable growth in the region's culinary and food scene, an outcome I'd like to think reflects, at least in part, the school's influence on the trajectories and careers of those who trained there. Conestoga College's Waterloo campus expansion is an ongoing multi-phase project that includes the School of Hospitality and Culinary Arts. In this project, we outfitted the culinary wing with state-of-the-art stainless steel casework and appliances, high-end AV equipment, and custom-designed multicolored black backsplashes. The expansion was purposely designed to transform an existing high school into a new culinary hub, accommodating future expansion. Working with the client, we designed the project to be phased and completed over time. Infrastructure was put in place for future photovoltaic panels to be installed to harness energy for the building. Subsequent phases included a new butchery lab, chocolate, and confectionery lab. In addition to providing an efficient, flexible, and functional environment for culinary instruction, the labs offer an attractive, fresh, and inviting atmosphere that students and faculty can be proud of. Along with our ethos of making every space, even highly technical spaces, joyful, another goal is to use simple and cost-effective materials in creative and inspiring ways. In this project, we worked hard to create unique patterns using conventional ceramic wall tiles to distinguish each slab with the different color and combination. As part of the college's culinary program, the teaching restaurant became a central part of the project for us. We see restaurants as an ultimate real-life simulator for students, combining elements from culinary and hospitality curriculum. As a simulation space and as a restaurant open to the public, it was important for us to pay attention to visibility, acoustics, and lighting to create a welcoming ambiance, and as an aspirational space equal to real-life restaurants. Careful consideration of AV technology, quiet ventilation systems, sightlines, sound-absorbing material, and custom-designed demonstration areas ensure the venue can accommodate a wide range of activities, from teaching scenarios to cooking competitions, and television broadcasts. The space we designed in this project are all meant to be flexible enough to allow for hands-on exploration of food and drink. My knowledge of these spaces from learning really stems from experience as a student in buildings like the one we're in right now. Spaces for learning need to be durable, flexible enough to allow for experimentation and the messes that we make. They need to contain specific tools of the trade to explore craft and be reconfigurable to facilitate group and individual learning. The picture on the right is from our office outing to the culinary school. We were treated with a pasta making lesson and a multi-course meal cooked by the students. There are definitely benefits to working with culinary clients. So the next project brought myself and the team to British Columbia. It's rewarding to be recognized for your expertise and sought after from the other side of the country. The Vancouver Community College program is centrally located adjacent to Victory Square in downtown Vancouver and is housed in one of the city's earliest modernist buildings. Since the original kitchens were built, instructional methods have evolved, with a greater emphasis on instructor-led demonstrations and hands-on learning. In parallel, the expansion of courses of international cuisines has created a need to renovate the facility to accommodate different equipments and ways of teaching. We designed specialized teaching environments, such as the Asian Cuisine Lab, to reflect authentic professional workflows that differ substantially from Western-style kitchen layouts. User engagement is an important part of our design process, and for this, we sat down with instructors to map out the workflow of the labs. We found that this varied dramatically from Western-style chef-led kitchens. You could say in a way that this keyed into the academic interest I had of making space for racialized groups and spaces that allow for different traditions and ways of doing. Drawing on lessons learned from earlier culinary projects, the design repositions the cooking labs along public corridors and introduces extensive glazing to maximize visibility into the learning environment. This approach not only showcases students at work, but also elevates the program's presence, visibility, and sense of prestige within the campus and the surrounding community. As with most of our culinary projects, this one also included a teaching restaurant meant to be the centerpiece for community engagement. The 80-seat restaurant overlooks the downtown skyline and the North Shore Mountains, creating a highly visible venue and a showcase for the school. Adjacent spaces such as corridors and cafeteria areas are generously proportioned and intentionally designed as informal gathering zones, supporting casual interaction between students and staff between classes. This strategy was particularly important in a college setting with a large international student population, where fostering strong sense of community can play a meaningful role in student well-being and belonging. My interest in culture, ethnicity, and city building, which I explored in university, has helped me a great deal to carve out a niche for myself professionally. These interests you have and the topics that you deep dive into during your university years can set the trajectory for your professional practice. In my case, studying how spaces are used by racialized groups, differ from the mainstream led me to a particular sensitivity to groups beside the main, and fine-tune my listening skills towards their needs. Our projects involving indigenous groups has become a defining part of Gow Hastings' work. Odeto is the name of our project at Seneca College. Odeto is an Anishinaabe word for good journey. It is a space where First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students can gather to practice their traditions and also find new friendships when they're away from their communities. Conceptually, the addition and the renovation are inspired by an image of a canoe pulling up to a dock, stopping at Seneca to gather knowledge before continuing on life's journey. The canoe-like form docks alongside the rigid lines of the existing concrete building, and as the only building on campus with an organic curvilinear design, Odeto breaks away from the colonial grid that dominates the city and the campus. When viewed from the outside, the building curves and creates a warm womb-like interior. The structure alludes to a Haudenosaunee longhouse, a traditional reference that is further reinforced by glass entrances on the east and west, where two red doors, aligned to the summer solstice, honor missing and murdered Indigenous women. The interior of the building consists of two distinct spaces. The first holds a student work area, counseling offices. Adapted from former classrooms, this work area is where students can use computers, work with tutors, or speak with a counselor. In the new purpose-built addition is the main lounge, a generous gathering space. With food at the center of most First Nations gatherings, a kitchen was included for preparation and warming. Outdoor space is easily accessed for traditional ceremonies and teaching. This project was first of many collaborations we've had with Churo Architect as our Indigenous design consultants. This collaboration has become more than an architect-consultant relationship, but has become a friendship and a partnership in creating spaces that align with cultural aspirations and the ultimate goal of reconciliation. Personally, I found that in engaging with First Nations groups, learning of their customs, values, and histories exposed gaps in the cultural understanding that I had, perhaps stemming from a standard Canadian education based on Western worldview. Our office, and I'm sure many Canadians, have learned more about the stories of First Nations groups in the last few years than in a lifetime, as a result of the progress of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I'm particularly proud of our work on this next project. Some projects are monumental, and some are literally monuments that mark our country's values and aspirations. Our project, the Spirit Garden at Nathan Phillips Square, responds to one of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to actions for governments to commission and install a residential school monument in each capital city. Instead of a monument per se, we created a living gathering space to honor residential school survivors and all the children lost to their families and communities. Nathan Phillips Square was selected as the site by the City of Toronto in partnership with Toronto Council Fire Native Cultural Centre as a publicly accessible, highly visible location. This project integrates indigenous culture, symbols, and plantings into the square and provides a venue to advance reconciliation between indigenous groups and non-indigenous peoples of Toronto. This photo was taken at last year's Day for Truth and Reconciliation ceremony. Our office has participated in the event every year since the space was inaugurated. And we found that the space is successful in bringing people together, creating discussion and moments of storytelling. We led the design as prime consultants to develop the southwest quadrant of the square. Engagement was, again, with Touro Architect and Toronto Council Fire Cultural Center to ensure that the design was shaped in collaboration with Indigenous peoples, survivors, and their organizations. The design of the Spirit Garden offers a dedicated place for contemplation, celebration, and ceremonies. The turtle sculpture, designed by Anishinaabe artist Solomon King, is at the center of the Spirit Garden and identifies the names of 18 residential schools that operated for more than 160 years in the province. The design of the sculpture is based on the traditional indigenous creation story of Turtle Island, or North America. The site also includes a reflecting pond, a two-row wampum walkway, a Voyager canoe, and an Inukshuk and a timber frame teaching lodge. The site is oriented to the cardinal directions, true north, and in this way exposes the 16-degree tilt of the Toronto street grid imposed over the landscape in colonial times. Symbolism of the project extends to the material choices as teaching opportunities. The use of metals to clad the teaching lodge speaks of the technology of copper smelting by the Indigenous peoples of the Great Lakes region long before European contact, and highlights the histories of technological innovation hidden from history books. Sharing of stories was central to the development of the design for this project. John Kishuk, an Anishinaabe artist and knowledge keeper, pictured in this slide, is demonstrating with the use of prose and human models how the structure of a traditional teaching lodge works, with the bodies of the people representing the vertical tree trunks and their arms representing their horizontal strapping. We use this storytelling to inspire this modern interpretation of a lodge using glulam and metal cladding. This project is currently under construction. It's the Scanlon Creek Nature Center, and it's envisioned as a new community hub and centerpiece for the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority's education program. I think we all have memories of school-age day trips to nature centers and conservation areas. It's oftentimes like this that was city kids' first time to see nature and explore the wonders, which is why I was particularly excited when this project was awarded to us. The 4-classroom facility will serve as a destination for school day trips from the surrounding school boards, welcoming students to an immersive learning environment that integrates nature-based science curricula with First Nations worldview. The building has been designed to achieve net zero carbon certification through a deliberate departure from conventional concrete and steel construction in favor of wood stick framing. Highly efficient mechanical systems were selected, and fossil fuel combustion has been eliminated from the building's day-to-day operations. We partnered with Touro Architects on this to infuse Indigenous knowledge into the designs from the beginning. When talking with them, their advice about traditional positioning of Indigenous buildings matched the advice from our energy consultants, demonstrating how new approaches to building siting can align closely with traditional First Nations knowledge of climate and place. The facility is carefully sited to take advantage of southern exposure for optimal daylight while being sheltered from the prevailing north and west winds. The exterior further reinforces these First Nations and conservation narratives. Concrete panels etched with drawings illustrating the process of birch bark processing were developed in collaboration with Touro Architects. The upper portions of the building are clad in akoya, a preserved wood product that speaks to forestry, durability, and sustainable forest management, an important part of the Conservation Authority's mandate. A full-scale mock-up of a portion of the building was constructed at TMU and is currently on display outside of the room here today. The mock-up features the akoya product and demonstrates the use of stainless steel fasteners to create a vertical screen. Learning is a continuous process that doesn't stop at graduation. It's a process that can lead to specialties. Learning during professional practice can be a continuation of interest developed in academia, or it can be something more unexpected. Starting my career making models at Gary's office led to opportunities to learn about how buildings are constructed. So it feels like a fitting circle to see that a part of the building that I've designed is being built here at the school today. I'll hand it over to Janice now as she can go through her process and journey in architecture as well.
In 2007, I joined Gary Hastings Architects as a recent grad from the University of Toronto. I'd interned locally and abroad with Moss Architects, Banish Architekten, Cohn Pedersen Fox, and Third Uncle, which gave me a good taste of the range and the possibilities of architecture. Looking at this timeline, my formative architectural intern years are at Gary Hastings Architects until 2013. I was then a project architect at MJMA Architecture Design, working in public buildings, focusing on civic and institutional recreational buildings across Canada and the United States. In 2022, I rejoined Gary Hastings Architects. The breadth of the projects discussed today in the next section spans from 2007 to 2025. And when we were brainstorming for this lecture, we had this idea of approaching it thematically using a timeline. We had a timeline of projects and in parallel, an architect's timeline, one that weaves and supports in a range of roles. So some projects I only interface with at moments, and other times every day and everywhere from design to construction. And to the students in the audience today, speaking to you in retrospect, I believe that all the intentional work matters, big and small, and even when it doesn't feel like it. As mentioned, Gary Hastings Architects designs public buildings and spaces with specialized knowledge in education facilities. Our clients include communities, municipalities, school board, colleges, and universities across Ontario. Designing for the public means creating meaningful spaces for people. Every space has a purpose and is meaningful to someone, deserving equal care and attention to make it nice and useful as possible, whether it be one room or many. We've often completed projects in spaces that few architects sought: broom closets, nondescript single rooms, state of good repair, back of house that's deemed unglamorous, but were just as critical to the functioning of public institutions. These in-between spaces renovated for temporary uses of design on an as-need basis would aggregate into a critical mass architecture. From 2008 to 2021, we completed various projects and feasibility studies in this very building, which was designed by Ram Tom in 1981. Projects included faculty and administrative spaces, service areas, studios, classrooms and studio support spaces, the fabrication zone, and the Paul H. Cocker Gallery. At the start of the project in 2008, with TMU Architecture, we developed a needs assessment strategy focusing on the most critical areas to achieve the greatest impact in the department. And over time, these small projects and interventions in one's in-between spaces collectively have created a cohesive identity and architectural expression. And I think many of you today interact with these spaces. So that is to say, small projects have big opportunities. In 2012, we began working on what would become the Paul H. Cocker Gallery, just right there outside, and renovations of the adjacent studios. Located near the building's main entrance, the existing space consisted of storage and studio support rooms. We were provided the mandate to create a flexible, public-facing, multi-use space for exhibitions, studio critiques, lectures, and formal events. And while the main atrium was not included, we knew from experience that impactful renovations have the ability to spill out into adjacent untouched spaces. And so these spaces were in fact repurposed, given new life by proximity. Large pivot doors dismantle the boundary between the atrium and gallery. When fully opened, these doors focus the flow of movement into the space. And the extension of the crisp, light floor tiles out in the atrium create a new amenity space with large integrated whiteboards, seating, and updated AV infrastructure. The doorway is framed in red, a unifying color used since our first renovation in 2008, and established a consistent environmental signage language across various programs across the School of Architectural Science. Red was extended into the studio spaces behind the gallery by way of a luscious floor-to-ceiling, two-toned felt pinup wall by Toronto's own Felt Studio. One particularly rewarding piece of the project was a donor and feature wall that's right outside there and wraps around the gallery entryway and extends into the main stairwell and elevator. The wall with a tessellated face made of translucent corian, integrated with patterns of LED strips, creates a bespoke illuminated ambience that could suit a variety of functions. We worked collaboratively with TMU students to provide the appropriate backup assembly for their feature wall. And there was a specific studio project to create design ideas for and dialogue around the feature wall. And so the constructed design that you see today and right behind you was created by the talented student body. Thank you also to the architectural science class of 1962 for your support. It's meant a lot to all those involved. Small projects, while limited scale, can be transformative. Gowsing Architects has an unwavering commitment to good design that tells a story, solves a unique and familiar program, and designs that are useful and meaningful, functions well, lasts a long time, doesn't burden the environment, and celebrates the everyday, and positively brings people together. In 2007, we began the first phase to transform a former Mercedes-Benz car dealership into Humber College's Center for Justice Leadership. The project was part of the college's strategy to annex neighboring buildings in order to expand their Lakeshore campus in Etobicoke, which was located directly south of this building. Instead of demolishing or recladding the building, the conventional facade was shrouded behind an aluminum screen with oblique proportions and a lush green living wall. Two screens undulating around the building created space for canopies, covered walkways, planters, and irrigation system, directing students to the east and west main entrance. This was one of my first projects at Gowsing Architects. And while I didn't know how to yet design a screen, I kind of knew Rhino. And I worked with the design director, Jim Burkett, to model the screen and to create basic elevations. Inspired by the nature of the center's activity, the new facade gives the building an alluring and discreet appearance. The screen was also conceived to reduce light levels that previously permeated the interior of the large showroom windows. The vertical garden provides a soft and natural contrast to the structural shape of the screen and the campus's hard paving along the busy Collector Road. And at night, the building radiates an ambient glow from the signage and will project Humber's wordmark logo from behind the screen, adding both drama and safety to the surrounding area. The second phase of the project was to transform the interiors into an 18,000 square foot facility dedicated to teaching forensic science. At that time in the aughts, shows like CSI and Dexter were part of the cultural milieu, boosting the program's popularity and demand. The Center for Justice Leadership enables students to learn the art of fingerprint dusting and other investigative techniques, including laser and video recording and state-of-the-art forensics lab. Students were also able to study crime scenes and hone their investigative skills in the facility's tiered 45-seat theater with a simulated one-bedroom apartment for the reenactment of crime scenes. Today, for a generation of crime podcast listeners, the space is just as relevant. The Center for Justice Leadership was completed in 2010. By retaining the scale of the former building, the project retains harmony with the private residents of the North. Its program infuses the neighborhood with an active and vibrant campus community. Now, continuing with the theme of transformation, between 2018 and 2022, we were commissioned by Fleming College to revitalize their A and B wing, located in the Sutherland campus in Peterborough. Both buildings served as a gateway to the campus, and we were tasked to breathing new life into them. A second life for a building is one that is adapted to people. 4A Wing, originally built in the 1970s and designed for Ron Tom's building by Ron Tom. Now, this is the second Ron Tom building that we've renovated. Our design solution transforms a formerly enclosed, heavy-looking structure into a colorful, light-filled space that was more welcoming and full of presence. Perforated pleated metal panels, some with color, animated the facade, giving vibrancy back to a modernist building. To bring physical lightness to a once dark building, we demarcated each entrance and key circulation space with a glass pavilion and added a transparent central hub that serves as a meeting place for socializing and informal learning. A skylight further draws natural light down into multiple stories. The design opens up the building and views from the inside and out and treats passersby with the glimpses of the learning taken inside. Now, these strategic design moves, however small and thoughtful, but changes can have a large impact, and it reflects our design approach to help institutional clients incrementally modernize their buildings, aligned with their strategic plan. And while a large portion of the building remained intact, our selective renovation and addition was more akin of a painterly approach versus a heavy-handed replacement. And so small changes can have big impacts. Similar to our approach at TMU Architecture Science, good design that is small, specific, and intentional can be transformational. Our purpose as designers is to be problem solvers, to give clarity to form and function. And to quote Dieter Rams, good design is as little as possible. Less is better because it concentrates on the essential aspects, and the products are not burdened by non-essentials. Back to purity, back to simplicity. We completed 2 separate projects at the McLennan Physical Laboratories building at the University in Toronto in 2017, and another we recently completed in 2025. Now, both projects had similar mandates. The ways of learning have changed, and the existing spaces need to adapt. Programs have evolved and have the expectations for students. The university looked at the potential of in-between spaces to encourage informal study and collaboration and to provide social spaces for students. Our first project was located on the first and second floor, the McLennan Physical Laboratories, where over time, the existing spaces between lab and seminar room no longer supported the newer approach of collaborative-based learning. Students sat crowded along large tables. The setup discouraged circulation and interaction. And the space was so inefficient that the department had to turn away over 100 students from a popular course each term due to the lack of space. We responded with a complete reimagining of the space that incorporates the latest collaborative technologies, styled by a sleek visual new identity that draws to the ideas of quantum physics. The Physics Cafe, as it was called, was created as a place of informal study and collaboration, featuring multi-use video walls, full-height writable walls, felt-wrapped columns for posting notices. Vertical bands of transparent colored film accentuate the curved glazing inspired by the Davidson-Germer's experiment that confirmed that particles of matter can have wave-like properties, a major advancement in the development of quantum mechanics, but here they serve practically, functioning to provide privacy to students that are using the workspaces. New teaching labs facilitate collaborative hands-on learning with informal breakout teaching spaces, smart boards, interactive projectors, and writable wall surfaces, all encouraging interaction. A foldable partition allows the room to expand and contract as needed, and while we used Corian for its durability. Materials and systems were selected based on low impact and sustainable strategies. Multiple separate waiting and study spaces that line the corridors outside the teaching labs, featuring seating alcoves for an individual or small groups. Plug-in points for charging devices helped make good spots to stay and work. Pinup boards and well-lit chalkboards encouraged the sharing of ideas and information. Similarly, in a recent job, on the second floor of the Physics Collaborative Learning Research Center, we just finished this project. As you might notice that we still have proofs in our photos. So for the next 2 projects, we just had these photographs and we're really happy to share them with you. The physics department wanting to reallocate space for the library to a new around-the-clock space, providing flexible learning spaces, collaborative areas, and private meeting rooms that could be pre-booked. And while there's still a strong need for physical books, the need has been reduced over time, with a new study space now prioritized. And so this area was the Collaborative Research Center, and then this other area was a library. And previously, this whole floor was the library. Our challenge in the existing space was designing an entrance that would connect the students who were mostly across the hall in their lecture rooms. We developed a 3-part narrative using environmental graphics and wayfinding, inspired by patterns of high-resolution images of atoms captured with an electron microscope, to draw and lead students through the Collaborative Learning Research Center and through to the library. Zone A, as we called it, was viewed from the outside of the space. At the main entrance, we created a large, colorful identifier graphic using layers of film. Once inside the space, Zone B, as you see here, the Zone B graphic can be clearly seen across the room, leading to a large, full-height display case showing collection of physics-related equipment and artifacts. Zone C is the terminus of the narrative, ending at the circulation desk. As you can see, the dot patterns reduce at each scale at each zone. The visitor is greeted by a feature column, shrouded by translucent backlit Corian, showing the final and smallest dot pattern using a colorful epoxy inlay. Our love of useful, playful use of color also shows up on the floor and is used to support the wayfinding strategy and to create spatial boundaries. Now, coming into this project as a product architect I now had the knowledge to create bespoke details that align with the story of the project. I love drawing, as many architects in the audience would relate to. My background in fine arts and interest in large-scale installations and environmental art allowed me to think of these spaces as opportunities for site-specific art. it's important to find your own interests and joys within the projects that speak to you. I'll close with this last project, also at the University of Toronto. Many of our projects consist of interior renovations where the need of the space requires catching up to users' expectation and the evolving needs of a dynamic educational institution. We recently finished interior renovation of Sydney Smith Hall, located in the St. George campus here in downtown Toronto. The Huron Street Commons refers to a student infill space along Huron Street podium that fosters positive learning outcomes for students by offering resources, information, effective systems, and programs that help them achieve their learning goals and empowers them to take responsibility for their learning. This is a student-led space, which requires spatial flexibility that's easily configurable with the support of technology for group study and group projects. Most of all, the space had to be welcoming to students. Now, before architecture school, my background was in fine arts and in art history. So the layered history of spaces and stories really appeals to me. Sydney Smith Hall was designed in 1959 by John B. Parkin and Associates, who are responsible for the other prominent buildings, such as the Lester B. Peterson Terminal 1. That's the original Terminal 1 that was used until 2004 and demolished in 2007. And in association with Mies van der Rohe, the Toronto Dominion Center. In 2002, Ian McDonald Architects renovated the two enclosed student commons areas underneath the existing podium, animating both the west and east sides. So more than just architecture, our renovation at the Huron Street Commons presented not a second life, but a third life to this existing space. Our renovation at the Huron Street Commons takes inspiration from the indigenous wampum, a traditional shell bead string that were presented at formal aspirations of cooperation and friendship between groups. The space consists of a long open room. On the west, a variety of configurable loose furniture, and on the east, a monochromatic walkway flanked by technology and interactive screens and writable walls, creating visual separation. The strip lighting pattern evokes the duality of the light and dark of the traditional wampum, creating focused areas of light and zones for activity. Movable screens have the ability to separate the room into separate study zones. The use of natural materials and colors reflect a biophilic built space full of textures and tones, from the shiniest glass to soft felt to tactile wood. At the start of each project, we ask, what is its intent? What is it for? What can architect offer? Our designs are always intentional with users in mind and a clear sense of purpose. Before all else, we seek to understand the project's purpose, allowing us to arrive at solutions that are both useful and meaningful. So whether projects large and small, the built environment is integral when used by people. Allan and I have had the opportunity to talk to a lot of students and young architects over the years who often ask us the questions, what should I do? What should I be in 5 years? How do I do things that matter? It's lovely as a profession, and it's normal to ask with real sincerity, what kind of architect do I want to be? So we say, find the frame that suits your face. We urge you to craft your own unique timelines with intention and authenticity. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Yeah, we really enjoyed looking back and spending time with you. Thanks.
I'll take this
Yeah.
one and I'll leave this one. Okay, this one's back up. So we have some time for questions. All you have to do is put your hand up and I will bring the microphone over to you. Otherwise, I'll start asking questions. You want me to start things off? Okay, we'll get the conversation lubricated a little bit. I mean, thank you so much. It's such a fantastic portfolio of work. And I think one of the things I admire most about the firm is how you've built such an exciting and vibrant portfolio out of work that falls under this umbrella of additions and renovations, right? Which I think the perception is that these are projects that play second fiddle to, the new building in the pristine kind of open landscape. And it's probably partly our fault because our students don't actually engage a lot with renovation or addition work, which I suspect you didn't in architecture school either. And for me, it raises a bunch of questions. And to see the historical documents and the figures kind of peppered in, it suggests that the firm has an approach or has developed a philosophy to how do you get to know buildings before you even start to think of what they could become or how clients can adapt them and change them in different ways. Do they have kind of identities that speak to you? And how do you start to read them as architects?
I mean, it's a really interesting aspect that you were talking about renovations, because when we were prepping for this, Philip Hastings was saying he was so surprised when he graduated that architects worked on other architects' building, because there's this sense that, once you do a building, it's kind of like iconic and it has its own integrity. And so like working in the renovation space, you always have that existing condition. You always have something that you're building off of. And so that's kind of the treat of working with institutions. Like every project is different. Every project has a different mandate and a different user group. So it's always new.
I think the process of getting to know a building, it's a lot of research, a lot of going through old drawings, a lot of speaking with the user, speaking with the people who take care of the places. That's probably the most important thing when doing a renovation. Renovations are hard. Renovations are much harder than new builds for sure. It takes a certain skill to anticipate things that could go wrong, things that are already wrong that you have to fix, things that people don't know are in their buildings. So it definitely is a niche and a difficult one at that.
I'm curious if you have future projects or if you're looking at ways to combine both your culinary design and educational spaces with your indigenous spaces.
That would be fantastic if that opportunity ever comes up.
No, nothing on like food prep and making of.
It hasn't happened. Well, a lot of these projects, they start with, not necessarily with us, they start with an organization or a school that has these ideas. I would love for a culinary school to think about indigenous cooking as a something to bring out into the mainstream. It's something that's already been talking about, that people are talking about, the popularity of indigenous food. So it hasn't come up, but if anybody knows, send them our way.
I would say that cooking is really integrated in indigenous spaces. And so a lot of times they're already integral to the program. And like, I know you're maybe asking about like culinary schools, but I would say like a lot of our indigenous, they all have kind of cooking as part of their own teaching practices and part of their culture.
I know you said renovations are harder than new builds, but how do you find parsing kind of the historical or preserving that building, but also bringing your own style? Like, is that a consideration of like not wanting to outdo the original building?
I think that there's two ways to look at heritage, where you can preserve a crappy Victorian building, crappy Victorian house that there's 20,000 of in the city. Or you can find a building that has bones or some meaningful bit that deserves preservation. I think you have to look at historic preservation at a case-by-case basis. If a building is preserved and stuffed, it's dead. I think that it's our job to kind of figure out what's important, what are spaces that you can enhance and reuse. And that's kind of, I think, our philosophy. Like with the Vancouver community college project, it's actually it's the first modernist building in downtown Vancouver, in Vancouver. It's not a great building, but there are elements that we wanted to kind of expose, like the nice kind of clear circulation. They had some beautiful staircases up the side that we wanted to kind of play off the materiality of. They had some really nice milled aluminum handrails that we were using as inspiration for some of the millwork in the restaurant. So it's about taking elements of the building that are good, and letting that become the constraint that ultimately makes good design. We all know that a blank piece of paper is the worst thing, and no instruction from your instructors is the worst thing, because you don't know how to form something. If you have some constraints, you always have something better.
I feel like we also have mixed feelings about Ron Tom around here too. So we get where you're coming from.
You guys intimately know him. I would like, we get a lot of our projects in historical buildings that with spaces that are underutilized. So they've already been highlighted by a certain group as these in-between spaces. And so like, I think buildings really do need to change. We change. And so our buildings shouldn't stay static.
Hello. So this question is for Janice. Before you mentioned that you had a background in visual arts. So I just wanted to know, going into a project, how did that aspect of, being in that field change the design as you went forward? Like, yeah.
Like how does it inspire?
Yeah, how does
our
it
work?
inspire like a certain like
I think
aspect?
you bring yourself into the projects all the time. And so you like in your own studio projects, you bring in things that you like, you bring your background, you bring your history into the projects. And in practice, we do the same thing. And even though we work in a team, like I was saying, you find your own joy into a project. And so I would say, like, especially in the beginning, when you're looking at inspiration, we always kind of look around. We always know what kind of like what other people are doing in art and architecture and things that inspire you. And so like I would say every day, something outside of architecture inspires us, whether it be like art, nature, it's not its own silo. And that's what makes it really interesting.
Thank you.
It's a fantastic question. And I mean, Allan, you spoke about the work you did at Carleton too, and it being craft-based and drawing-based. And I think it's interesting to think that, the way to get good at architecture is by doing something other than architecture sometimes, right? Other questions? Oh, here we go.
My question is for Allan. You mentioned you worked on a project like a culinary school for Durham College.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that it was one of your first projects that you kind of took on, like having a more of a major role in. Was there any projects that came before that kind of prepared you for that? And if so, what was something that really helped you mitigate like those challenges?
It was definitely the first project of that scale for me. It's often something that happens in offices. You get thrown into a project that's maybe bigger than what you're used to, but we work in teams, right? And in that case, there was the mentorship of our design director was Jim, who was there and kind of walked me through each stage of design, of contract administration was a big thing. And that's usually the case when young architects start in firms, is that they're paired up or mentored with other architects. And that kind of learning process happens that way, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The gray hair, I am not a student. However, I was many years ago. My question is about your model downstairs that Phil Tischler in the lab made. Could you just talk about it, what the reason was behind it?
Sure.
And rather than building, sort of that condo showroom type model, you built an actual cross section of, and it's very interesting. So if you could just comment on that.
Well, it's kind of an opportunity that the school and you gave us, but it's because the material that we're using for the cladding of the building, the Akoya preserved wood product is quite new and quite specialized. We thought that a mock-up would be beneficial for the contractors to kind of give them a preview of what to expect in the field. We often ask for mock-ups during construction for the contractors to make pieces of the building or to demonstrate a technique or how something's gone put together so that we can approve it or change it or give advice. So that corner of the building there we chose as because it's the most complicated part of the building with different parts, different cladding, different envelope conditions. So we wanted to give them a one-to-one scale visual to figure out how to build this thing.
Your colleague came down and we had all the contractors come in and essentially call it a version of a design charrette.
Yeah,
so that
absolutely.
all of the contractors would learn what your vision was. You'd also define what the quality expectations are. So that when they go work on site, the various cladding, the decking and the fins, et cetera, have an expectation that they can meet that you've demonstrated. So it was a really fun, it was a very interesting project. And again, it's just downstairs, but I applaud Allan and his colleagues for embracing it. It's not often today we do what's called an in situ model of some scale. And the hope is that at some point, students will learn as to why Phil Tischler built this thing. And with Dow Hastings' help we'll get a chance to see what it looks like when the building is up and running and it opens in June.
In the summer, hopefully.
Wonderful. Yeah, cheers. Thank you.
Unless there are any more questions, I think we will draw things to a close. Is there anything else? No? Okay. Can we thank Allan and Janice again for being here with us? Fantastic talk. And I was just going to remind you when the next lecture event series is, and then I remembered I don't know when it is. So let me just check that for you real quick. We are going to be back here on February 12th. So mark that one in your calendars. Thank you again, both. And thanks everyone for coming.